Hey, welcome to West Coast Bias. I'm Andrew Nemec, joined as always by Suke, Jason Sukanik. How you doing, man?
What's up, brother?
Recovery mode for me. First of all, for people who are still watching and listening and everything, thank you for being patient. I've been quite sick for about 6 weeks. Not a total medical mystery, but just no answer for a while. I lost 20 pounds and just stomach, all kinds of stuff in the gut. Just really, really sick and missed some time. And yeah, I feel we now have a diagnosis, but it made for a scary 6 weeks. I think you saw me occasionally when I was able to make it for the recruiting show.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, you look like
Yeah.
ass. And that
Like
kept like,
hell.
dude, you still look like ass. How come you
Yeah.
still look like ass? It's been a month. You still look like ass. And Rob's like, is he okay? And it's like, no, he's not.
Yeah.
And knowing my family's karma and the way things have gone for me in the last few years, I immediately went to the worst place. Like, my mother-in-law 2 years ago for Thanksgiving couldn't eat because she had a stomach ache. They told her like 2 weeks later, she went in for an appointment. They said, you need to see an oncologist. 2 weeks later, they told her you have weeks to a few months to live. And stomach issues, right? My mom got a cough this summer. That was lung cancer. She's not a smoker. So I immediately just went to, oh my God, here we go. This is going to be the worst thing. And luckily it's not. I had some help in the medical situation from somebody who kind of went out of their way to help me out. And I am forever grateful. And now I'm diagnosed and have medicine and all that. But it was a scary little bit there. I got really, really sick for about a
Yeah.
week where I was real sick. And it was scary, man. I don't, we'll spare everybody symptoms because God only knows what time they're listening, if they're listening at lunch or dinner. But I was really, really, that's about as sick as I've ever been for as
Yeah.
long as I've ever been. I was sick every day to some level.
Yeah.
Maybe some days it was a stomach ache, and then other days it was much worse, like more flu-like symptoms. But 6 weeks of that where you can't eat, I was bone broth and bread. It was it was a nightmare. So I'm
Yeah,
barely.
it's scary when you don't know, when something's happened to you and you don't know what it is, for an hour or a day and then a week and weeks. That's scary stuff. And of course, I was there to make fun of you because it's all I know how to do
Right.
is make fun of horrible situations. But it's that's scary stuff. I'm glad that you have at least an idea of what you're facing now. It's not, ass cancer or something, because that stuff is when you're faced with potentially having to deal with life altering circumstances. I mean, Lord knows I've been there in my life. It's not a fun thing.
Yeah, yeah, and I don't mean to be a downer. Just I've
No,
dealt with my
no,
share of
yeah,
negative stuff in life, and
yeah,
this really kind of put the fear of God in me, and really actually kind of changed the way I'm going to view life going
yeah,
forward, man. Because it was really scary there for a
yeah.
little while. So
I think everyone has faced something in their life that has made them. And if you haven't, dude, knock on whatever piece of wood you have around you, because
yeah, for real.
most of us have had to face something, whether that's with a parent, a child, sibling, yourself. And even if you faced other people when it's happened to yourself. I've never had any sort of real, like, I've had a lot of surgeries, but that's all. I'm tearing a pec, or I'm ripping up a knee or a shoulder or something. But I remember once, it's probably the scariest day of my actual life. It was shortly after my wife had passed away, maybe a few months. And you're trying to hold it together, and I got little kids. And I remember I'd still tell my kids the story, and they kind of, we laugh about it now. But I was in my kitchen, and I have like an acid reflux thing that I deal with from time to time. And I didn't know this at the time, but apparently if you drink something too fast and you tilt your head back, it can cause problems with things going down. Had no idea. So this is 10 plus years ago. And I'm trying to get the kids out the door to go to school. And so I made a protein shake. I'm shaking it up, and I'm just going to slam
Trying to
this
be
thing,
quick. Yeah, yeah,
trying to
yeah.
be quick, right? I'm getting out the door. So I'm dressed because I drop the kids off and then I go to the gym. And so I'm sitting there and I'm like, get your bags, whatever. And I go to slam this thing, and I just, big protein shake, tilt my head back, chug it. And out of nowhere, I feel like I'm having a heart attack. Like my
Oh man.
chest just, it feels like I'm having a heart attack. I can't breathe. There's just this radiating pain in my chest, and I feel like I'm going to go down. Like I'm going to go face first. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, dude, no, like I'm not, like I don't want my kids to see this. And I'm debating, do I tell them to call 911? Do I like tell them to go get my phone? And I sent them outside. I said, hey kids, just go wait in the car. I need you to just go wait in the car and I'll be right there. And they were like, what? And I'm like, just go in the car. You know, you're doing like that.
Get out.
Get in the car. Get in the car.
Yeah.
And they get in the car and I got down on all fours. And because I was like, I'm getting ready to pitch forward. And I sat there and I was like crawling. And I thought for about a minute I was having, now I'm like in my head, I'm like, am I having a heart attack? I'm like, I don't think so. It's not in my arm, it's in my chest. I'm like, what the hell is going on? And I would say it was about a minute and a half of just sheer absolute terror where I'm like, I'm going to die on this floor. And I was trying to get to my phone. I was going to call 911 or at least was going to call an ambulance, something. And I was like, I couldn't get to it. And I'm just laying there and I can't breathe. And it was the scariest minute of my life. And then like everything subsided, whatever. I called my doctor and I was like, who's my friend? And I was like, hey, what the hell was that? And he kind of walks me through it. And every now and then still, if I drink something too fast, I get a little twinge of that. But now I know what it is and I know to stop and, you know, don't drink it. And there's a little like kind of breathing technique and where I can lay down. But yeah, for that minute and a half, when you don't know why you're having extreme pain, when you don't know why something's happening, it's the scariest thing ever. You know, well, it's recalibrated. So like I said, everyone's been there. I think everyone can relate to that. So man, we just I love to I have no other way than to joke. So when serious stuff happens. So in all seriousness, dude, I'm glad that you got a diagnosis. Hopefully glad you're feeling better and you're on the other side of it and you've been through enough crap with you and your family that this is the last thing you need. So I'm hoping that, you know, we can start getting on here and talking about dumb stuff that doesn't matter. And, you know, because that's, you know, all that other crap goes away when you're dealing with serious issues that you think may be life altering.
Well, if you want to talk about crap, we can talk about Washington and Oregon State to start. But if we want to pivot to more positive,
yeah, I don't know which one's worse. I mean, they're both horrible losses, just in two very different ways with very different circumstances, very different programs right now. But
we'll get to them.
Crushing losses for both schools that had no business, and I mean that, no business losing either one of those games.
Yep. And we'll start with Oregon. I also almost lost a game that it felt like they were in control of. They pick up a win over Iowa, and that game's now far enough in the rearview mirror. I think it makes sense to kind of just take a big picture look. They're banged up and need to get healthy, and that's kind of the big overarching kind of caveat of anything we'd say, right? Because if we talk about them as a national title contender, I think we would both agree that they're probably not. If DeCorian Moore doesn't come back, if Evan Stewart can't come back, if Kenyon Sadiq, if they go 0 for 3 on those guys coming back, and there's no reason to think that they're going to go 0 for 3. I'm just saying health is going to really matter in terms of where we project this team. But in general, I think the Oregon fan that's like, oh, you know, gritty, tough win, but like what's going on with this team? And this is what the Big Ten does to you. Styles make fights. Iowa was going to try to win in a slugfest. Oregon didn't have their weapons. They win a game that's kind of a grind them out game. They've won some shootout games with Lanning. I'm okay with this win, you know, with the injuries they faced. This is okay. You know, sometimes just getting by. Go look at the Nick Saban Alabama teams and look at their regular season. They had the occasional 24-20 win over Vanderbilt where you're like, what the hell was that? Or, you know, a 21-20 win over Mississippi State. It happens. Iowa is a good football team. They're a ranked football team. They're not the old Vanderbilts and Mississippi States of the old SEC. It's a good football team. The weather sucked. The officiating was really rough. There were a couple of plays. I was not feeling well, so I didn't watch the game live. And even then, people were sending me plays like, what the hell is this officiating? The McClellan offensive pass interference, illegal hands to the face on a play where the guy just kind of grabs him here and gets his jersey up. There were a few of them that were just absolutely horrible. The Ife Obadegwu defensive pass interference where he just rides his hip, the receiver runs out of bounds. There were a bunch of them. Sometimes just getting a win is okay and survive in advance, you know?
Yeah, we want everything to be perfect, and it's not going to be perfect. I mean, Alabama, I think, you know, you talked about national title contenders. I think Alabama might be the second best team in the country behind Ohio State, and Alabama survived a game against South Carolina. It happens almost, you know, unless you're Joe Burrow and LSU and you beat everyone by 30 points. these things happen. Ohio State last year, at the end of the year, was as good a team as I've seen in years, and they lost 2 games during the regular season, one to a team that couldn't throw the ball in Michigan. So stuff happens, bad weather, injuries. A team, give Iowa credit, dragging you into deep water. Iowa's a really good defense. Oregon ran the ball for like 7 yards a carry. They just couldn't throw it. All of those things play a factor. So yeah, I try not to get into, how you win. Sometimes it's just you win. Now, if you want to go on the flip side of that, I think you have enough evidence now, whether it's the Penn State game, the Indiana game, Wisconsin, Iowa, the offense isn't quite what we thought it was. And again, some of that's injuries, some of that weather, but you take a 4-game sample now against arguably your best competition. I think you're averaging 22 points, I think it is, in those 4 games. And there's certainly been moments. I mean, that throw Dante Moore had to Malik Benson's as good a throw as you'll see. I mean, he's certainly capable of making every throw. I mean, that is an NFL throw. If that ball is anywhere else, it is incomplete, but it wasn't. It was a perfect throw. So certainly the potential's there. But at this point, to me, the defense is for real. And the offense is kind of what we thought it was going to be, with a young receiving core, a young quarterback, and young backs. We thought that this was going to maybe be a year away, and I feel that it's a year away. Now, the saving grace is I don't think outside of Ohio State there looks like a real dominant team. This may just be the new world of college football. And so I certainly put Oregon in the upper tier of teams, but does this look like a national title team? No. Could it be? Yeah, I guess under the right circumstances, because
on
if
their
someone
best day, yeah,
on their best day, it certainly could be. Can you get through 4 of these? I don't think so. But I could say the same thing about just about everyone not named Ohio State. Maybe Alabama, maybe, but I think it's more like Ohio State. And so when you have flaws and you have warts, you're going to have stuff that you look at and say, I don't know. And I can literally do that just about every team in the country. If we were sitting down and we were having this conversation about Texas, we're having this conversation about Texas A&M, who, by the way, is undefeated, having this conversation about Texas Tech, you'd have this conversation about whoever. You can have this. And that's what happens when you have flawed teams. And Oregon is a very good but flawed team. And I think right now, I don't know, if you view this any other way, then I would be very interested to know how someone could sit here and make the case that either they're great or that they're crappy. Is that neither one of those things that's not rooted in any sort of substance. I mean, at this point in the year, you've laid the roadmap for what you are, and to me, it's pretty clear what Oregon is.
Yeah, I think they're a tier below the juggernaut tier, whatever tier you want to put that in. Yeah. And I don't know how far that goes. In fact, I think it's an interesting exercise to look at the college football rankings. Tell me when the tier stops at the top. Ohio State.
Done.
Yeah, that's what I think too. I think so too. And then I think there's Indiana, Texas A&M, Alabama, Georgia, Texas Tech, Ole Miss, Oregon. And maybe Oklahoma's in there.
I put Notre Dame.
That's fair.
I put Notre Dame, and then I don't think there's a big difference in any of those teams. Like, I look at Indiana, and Indiana's really good. And again, what did Indiana do? Just survived a scare. One of the best throws and catches you'll ever see. I talked about the Dante Moore, Malik Benson throw. The throw that Mendoza had, I think it was Cooper, the toe tap in the back of the end zone. Jr., yeah. I mean, my God, that's insane. That's insane
those
stuff.
Those are two of the best throws in all of from a pro scouting tape situation. Those are two of the best throws in the whole season.
And it's a Heisman Trophy moment. But when I look at Indiana, and we've seen this, when they're going to have to go play 4 games, I guess 3 because they're going to have a bye. Indiana does not have the top end talent that those other teams have. They have NFL guys. They have 2 NFL receivers. They have an NFL quarterback. I think they have an NFL lineman, at least one on the offensive line. I think there's 2 NFL defensive linemen, and they have a linebacker, and they maybe have the best linebacker, and they maybe have the best corner in the Big Ten when healthy. So there's NFL bodies there, 100%, right? Sure. That's why they're the number 2 team in the country. But when they play Texas A&M one week, Oregon the next, and then play Georgia, they will be the less talented team 3 weeks in a row. And, when you look at talent index, Dave Bartu, College Football Matrix, shout out Dave, he does a great job of this.
Phenomenal.
Most of the time, just a mere talent rating, that's all you did was took coach effect and talent rating Dave picks about 80% of the games correct. And that is almost always just based on those two factors. So, when you're facing a team that's significantly better than you from a talent standpoint, it's kind of a coin flip game. And so the idea that Indiana is going to win 3 of those games in a row, we haven't seen it before. It's never happened. And injuries are going to start piling up. Like one of the things that Oregon has right now that they're so beat up. One of the nice part is that being a top 10 recruiter, you've got some more depth. Alabama, Georgia, teams like that, they're able to withstand injuries better than a team like Indiana or a team like Texas Tech or even a team like Oklahoma, maybe even Notre Dame. Although you saw Notre Dame last year get really beat up on defense, but there was still enough there to get to a national championship, couldn't get over the hump. And so to me, I think that's a huge issue with Indiana. Texas A&M is really good. Texas A&M easily could have 2 to 3 losses, easily. Alabama can't run the ball. They just can't. Jam Miller is an okay back. I think it's one of the worst backfields Alabama's ever had.
Oh, it's got to be. I mean, they have years where they have 2, 3, 4 guys that are going to the NFL, and this doesn't feel like that.
And their offensive line is, and then I look at Georgia, and Georgia's offense just doesn't have the guys that it's had, and the defense isn't quite as dominant. Texas Tech has a phenomenal defensive front. I think their quarterback play is spotty, and they're one of the worst red zone teams in college football. They can't score when they get into those situations. So again, I can do this for every single team, which is other than Ohio State. So you ask me where the tier is, it's Ohio State and everything else. And that doesn't mean that Ohio State can't be beat. Of course they can. But this is, they're the one team that I look at, and I can't really, they don't run the ball great. They're starting to do it a little better. Bo Jackson, they got that other kid from West Virginia, but that tier, I don't think there's any difference between Indiana at 2 and Notre Dame at 9. And
what even about Miami on a good day? Miami, Indiana on a good day?
Sure. I just don't think there's any difference in those teams. None. Yeah. And so, if it's not Ohio State, man, it's just going to be the team that stays healthy and the team that gets hot and the team that goes on a run, or you just get a weird bounce going your way. But there just isn't. It's a strange year in college football, and maybe this is going to be more the norm going ahead with the portal and everything and talent being spread out, that there just isn't there just isn't the ability, or we don't have the consistent teams that are rising up. We just don't.
That might be kind of a good thing. I know there's a lot of elements of the new world that aren't great, but if you told me on the surface schools have less money to just be in an arms race for facilities, and instead that money's going directly to the players, talent is dispersed, kids are getting paid earlier, and the field is more even. Mm-hmm. And you just gave me those, and you left out the conference realignment, and you left out the transfer portal and some of the stuff that goes on there. I'd be really happy with a lot of those things. This playoff is going to be really interesting. And we could see a situation where one of those teams that's playing in a first round game gets on a hot streak and wins. Yeah. That could very easily happen.
Dude, that's exciting. I think it'd be great for college football if
Indiana won it.
If Indiana or Texas Tech,
Oregon. It wouldn't be the worst thing if Oregon won.
Yeah, Oregon, Ole Miss, if they found a way to do it like a non-traditional SEC.
You just mean the non-Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State team. That'd be great.
Yeah. Even Texas A&M winning, with Elko and the story that's been there. Yeah, outside of Ohio State, Georgia, Bama, Notre Dame, Texas, someone other than that winning, I think would be good for college football. I think Texas, if I had to pick one team to get hot, I think Texas Tech, and maybe that wouldn't be for some people because basically they bought their roster, and maybe that pisses
people feel that way about Texas A&M and Oregon. So there'll be an undercurrent of that.
But at the same time, I think it might be good in that, hey, if you dump resources, and let me just say this to anyone that bitches about teams buying, and my team, by the way, just got dog walked by Texas Tech. Just absolutely embarrassed. Oh my God.
What was the spread in that game? Because I thought Texas Tech was going to win by
it was like 8.5. And I said on the show, I told everyone that would listen, I was like, dude, this ain't going to go well for BYU. Yeah, I don't know if you want to lay the points, but we ain't going to score. And we didn't score. Dude, that thing, if if Texas Tech could finish a drive, dude, the amount of times they turned it over on downs or had to kick field goals, dude, that thing could have been 60-0.
Yeah.
We just didn't belong on the same field with them. And I know some BYU fan was all pissy and moany about that. And people like, well, they spent $7 million on their defensive line. Well, then you spend it.
Well, they did. AJ Devanza and Ryder Lyons. It's just coming next year.
Exactly. Well, the Mormon Church has $8 gajillion. Get someone over there in Salt Lake to open up the coffers and go buy a defensive line. I do like the fact that if you're willing to spend and you're like, well, it's not fair because I don't have the money. Okay, well, then shut up then. Then go play something else.
Well, that's the same way it works in real life.
Exactly.
Like, my neighbor has a Porsche, but I don't have a Porsche.
Okay,
does he have the money? Get a better job.
Get a better job. Like every one of these schools has billion-dollar endowments. Look, I like the fact, and I think when Lanning said it earlier this year, when he said to the Oklahoma State thing, he goes, yeah, we spend. I'm glad I'm at a place that spend. He goes, we spend to win, and other people don't to have excuses. And that may be a harsh reality of it, but in this world, I like that if you can get a couple people that are willing to spend money and say, hey, we want to be good and competitive, you can. I'd rather live in that world than where the big shiny metal door is closed to anyone not named Ohio State. So if I'm not born on third base, then I have no chance. How is that a better world than a world where if I get some boosters, and almost every school has money, right? BYU has been an irrelevant school in college football for 40 years, basically. And all of a sudden now we have some wealthy guys. We have some wealthy boosters. And in basketball and football, we're like, well, we can do this. Maybe not to a national championship level, but I'm like, we can be relevant. We can spend. SMU did this. Texas Tech did this. Vanderbilt did this. Indiana did it. So, I love that we are living in this world, and you can't tell me that that's bad. Now, there may be a handful of schools that, for whatever reason, don't have the donors, don't have the drive, don't have the, the wherewithal, the momentum, all of that stuff. You don't have it. And that's okay. We're not going to live in a world where everyone is on an equal playing field.
It's not charity.
No, it's not. So I like that we are living in a world now that if you get enough people or one guy that decides, Texas Tech has two ex-players that became billionaire oil guys. And they said, dude, I want Texas Tech to be good. And they just said, F it, man. We're going to do everything we can. And here's Texas Tech. I freaking love that. Well, no matter who you are, you're one big swing away from saying, no, man, we're going all in. We're going to win. I go back to when Oregon lost to Texas all those years ago. And Phil Knight sat in a room with everyone that mattered with Oregon football and said, what do I have to do for us to win a national title? And he was worth $37 billion at the time, and they all got together. And it's not as simple as just saying, I'm going to spend money, but they developed a plan, and it took them a couple decades, but now they're knocking on the door. And I don't know. I like that world that we're living in, because you can always find a way. It's just a matter of you have to get creative about it, but you commit and you spend, you can play in this world.
Well, not to like tear down everybody's dream of how it used to be, the golden era, but like a lot of people point to Gonzaga basketball as a school that just organically did it, and it was amazing. Once they had a Cinderella run, which was totally legit. Dan Dickow was a local kid. I think he went to Prairie High School in Vancouver.
Played against him in high school.
Yeah, that whole thing. You think they got Chet Holmgren without having funds and stuff? Yeah. I mean, what are you talking about? Like, some of the stuff that people think is like, well, they just kind of came along and it worked out. Dude, I covered recruiting before the NIL era, and guys could ask for 4 and 5 figures for official visits. And that was happening all the time. 5-star guys wanted to go on an official visit. I need 5 or 10 grand. I think standard. And so this idea that guys weren't paying is stupid. Like Nick Saban, part of Nick Saban is that they had a system in place that worked really well. The SEC was kind of hands off in terms of policing, and they had a good system. They developed talent, and they could hoard talent because there was no transfer outlet for superstar guys. So yeah, you wait your turn, and you will wait your turn, and our backups are going to be amazing. And we're going to have 9 5-star guys. Now everyone kind of has the ability. They say, okay, now it's legal. Everyone can kind of go get guys. But this idea that like Alabama was buying guys and Ohio State is, and now Oregon joined it because of this. But look at those darlings like Gonzaga that came out of nowhere and did it the right way. they won a couple things and capitalized on their marketing and started spending money too, just like everybody else. No one's getting to the top of the mountain without spending money. Not before it was legal, and not now that it's legal. You have to spend. And now that at least it's front facing, teams that can make the excuse within their front offices, within their athletic departments that like, hey, well, they're buying players and we're not. Yeah, it's legal now. So maybe before you could have said, hey, we're on the up and up and we're not going to win this way because they're buying guys and we won't do it. Now it's legal. You got no more excuses. Go raise the funds and go get some wins because it's doable. It's right there. And by the way, look at Oregon State. They raised some funds and spent $1.5 million for Malik Murphy. There's a whole story there with like that money wasn't there unless they could go get Malik Murphy. Like that wasn't in a pot. Somebody just said, let's go get a big time player. The fact that you would even have a scenario where someone could say, I'm not giving you this money unless you go get a superstar quarterback that had real flaws, that's deeply problematic, Your funds need to go just out and let the coaching staff evaluate who needs to come into the program. Like there's so many layers to that. But Oregon State went and tried to make a splash with, hey, our schedule sucks. After the first 4 games, we'll win 8 or 9 games. Let's throw a bag at Malik Murphy and go win 8 or 9. It didn't work out. Imagine if they'd have spent that 1.5 on 5 linemen instead. Yeah. But you can spend, and there's no excuse not to anymore.
Well, look at like the NFL, right? We look at the NFL that has a salary cap, even. So we're all supposed to be able to spend the same. And we love the NFL. Excuse me, my little morning, get the burpees there with my energy drink. But the NFL is supposed to be.
Dude, with what I've been through in the last 2 weeks, that's nothing. But we'll keep that on the censored mode.
Yeah, I told you that's my little acid reflux thing that I battle with. Yeah. Especially in the morning when we're taping this. But yeah, the NFL, right, supposed to have an equal playing field. Philadelphia and Cincinnati do not operate in the same way. Cincinnati can pay no one, and Philadelphia pays everybody. They manipulate the cap. Because they have an owner that's willing to spend bonuses and pay stuff up in front, right, and move money around at the trade deadline. Cincinnati can't do jack shit.
Is that just being more liquid? Is that part of it?
It's and they're just when in the NFL, when you pay a signing bonus, you have to put that money into escrow. So when you give a quarterback a $200 million guaranteed deal, that owner has to write a check for $200 million. And like he has to have that money. Like it goes. Like that's I don't know how many people know that. So if you're not a rich owner like what that you have in Cincinnati, Mark Davis used to have this with the Raiders, they wouldn't hand out giant bonuses. And they weren't willing to move money around because they were cash poor. They were rich because the value of their franchise was rich. Whereas in Philadelphia, you're just rich because you're rich. And they let their GM be aggressive and move things around. Same thing in Major League Baseball, right? There's no salary cap there, but I'm a fan of the New York Mets. And we used to have the poorest owner in baseball because all his money got taken in the Bernie Madoff scheme. We couldn't pay anyone. And now we got Steve Cohen, who's, I think, right now the richest owner in baseball. I think he actually might be the second richest owner in baseball. And we have a $350 million payroll. And by the way, that team didn't make the postseason. You know, so it's just, you can spend money wisely and you can spend money, poorly. Right. And yes, it certainly helps to have, but this idea that money cures everything, again, spend $1.5 million on Malik Murphy. What'd that get you, right? As opposed to 5 linemen.
A backup quarterback.
But the fact of the matter is that it's there, and it's there in pro sports, and it's there in college sports, and it's been there forever. And so I just get tired of people complaining. This is true in every business, every walk of life, and it's true in every sport. Even sports like the NFL, where there's supposed to be a hard cap, and we all get to play by the same rules, it is not. It still comes down to who has money and who's willing to spend their money like winning's the most, or who wants to just sit on a pile of cash and make money and run it like a business. Cincinnati Bengals and the Philadelphia Eagles are the two best examples of that. And that's in the NFL. So, and then you get rid of the cap. And if we wanted to really go back to the world of the NCAA, and you want to talk about how stupid that whole thing is, and we want to talk about the purity of it, is there a coach that is thought of in a more enlightened way, in a pure way, than John Wooden? Right? I'm guessing John Wooden at UCLA was probably that. We're going to hold that up as the golden days.
I know where you're going with this.
We're going to hold that up as the golden days of college, right?
Right.
You know,
The pinnacle of sportsmanship and class.
Pinnacle of sportsmanship and class, and the pyramid of success, and Bill Walton and all that, and Lou Alcindor, and right, that was the greatest thing ever. And that was when we did it for the love of the game, and it wasn't about money. And go look up Sam Gilbert. To anyone that throws that John Wooden shit at me, I just laugh. And I'm not trying to crap on the memory of John Wooden. John Wooden, by all accounts, was an amazing human being and was great and one of the best coaches ever. Do yourself a favor and go look up Sam Gilbert. Because I'll tell you what, UCLA was not UCLA without Sam Gilbert. And Sam Gilbert was a businessman that loved UCLA. And guess what Sam Gilbert did? Sam Gilbert paid for players. He paid for abortions. He paid for cars. Yeah, go look up Sam Gilbert. Sam Gilbert might have been the sleaziest human being. Like, remember that situation that happened down in Miami with Shapiro?
Of course,
and that whole thing. Sam Gilbert was just an earlier version of that. And we look at Miami and we look at what happened down there with Shapiro and paying women and again, the abortions and buying players and cars and apartments and drugs and all that. Guess who was paying for Bill Walton's LSD? Guess who was paying for girlfriends? You think all those guys went to UCLA out of the goodness of their heart? No, Sam Gilbert paid for all of them. Sam Gilbert was the original sleazy NCAA guy. And it doesn't mean that anyone could win national titles, all that. But let's not act like John Wooden won all those games because he was a good dude and had the pyramid of success. It was a huge part of it. But down at the base of the pyramid of success that no one talks about in that pyramid was a big old fancy fat sleazy guy named Sam Gilbert. So stop with this romanticizing NCAA and that if we just got rid of the money and everyone had equal opportunity and if we go back to the olden days, horse crap.
Right.
That stuff drives me, as you can tell, that stuff drives me crazy when people try to talk about the olden days of college football.
Oh, the
sport is being ruined.
Right. It's always been corrupt. It's always been corrupt. One last thing on Oregon. Just the buzz is loud. The draft guys in podcast form who talk about the draft are loud about it. Dante Moore coming back is like the worst kept secret in NFL draft circles. I listened to a mock draft. NFL Stock Exchange, by the way, is a podcast that does draft. If you're super into the draft, like year round, they're amazing. They did a mock draft and just led with, hey, people are going to think it's weird because we're doing a whole mock draft. We're not including Dante Moore because everyone kind of knows he's coming back. Yeah. So I think
he should, by the way, he should. Some of the shine certainly has come off.
His ability to read things when he's under pressure, a little bit alarming. He's just, it needs to be more experienced. It's not that he's terrible. That throw is unreal. The highs are so high and the lows are not lows like Arch Manning lows where you're like, oh, his form is crap. And because of that, his footwork is complete shit and his mechanics are garbage when he gets pressured. That's not it. It's reading things, seeing things, trusting his eyes, getting rid of the ball when there's pressure to his left, throwing, over the blitz and that kind of thing. Those are just things he needs to learn that are experience things, which is a really good sign because I still think he's going to end up being in the discussion for 1-1. I just think it's going to be next year, not this year. So that's a good thing. I also liked seeing in that Oregon game that Oregon ran up the middle quite a bit. They used Poncho and Pregnon and were like, we're running right behind these two dudes. I mentioned this.
As anyone in the country.
I mentioned this on Twitter. I'm already doing my mock drafts, which you'll love. I've already started my multi-round mock drafts on PFF. Both Poncho and Pregnon are like in the 200 to 300s, like they're 6th, 7th round picks right now. Yeah. This is what I'm talking about with like the market with the draft and how wrong it is. Pregnon's going to be a late first, probably not, but more like a 2nd round pick and a very solid 2nd round pick for a zone blocking scheme that think Seahawks Niners kind of style, very Shanahan-y guy. He's going to be phenomenal in that kind of scheme. And he's going to be like a 2nd rounder. Poncho, very similar, even at center. He's going to be a 2nd or 3rd round pick. Those dudes are listed in like the 200 to 300s in the rankings. They're top 100 guys nationally. Yeah. And this is what I'm talking about. Isaiah World is projected as a 3rd rounder right now. 200 and something spots ahead of both those guys. World's behind both of them by a good distance. So the draft, again, even people who are really involved, and PFF does a phenomenal job. No shots there. I subscribe. I love PFF. When you really watch it and you really evaluate it, you'll realize that people don't really know what's going on with the draft very well, even until we get into January, February, March, and really Senior Bowl is when you first start to kind of get a pecking order where you're like, hey, this guard from Vanderbilt's the best guard in the draft. And you're like, really? He's 280th in the big boards. That's not how it really works. Pregnon and Poncho, I just want to highlight, not only did it work on the field this week, the draft buzz on those guys, they're accelerating really, really quickly, where could push for first round, both of them. I don't think so. But when we talk about who's going to be a first rounder, Mateo, Dante Moore eventually, Kenyon Sadiq, you're going to have to start mentioning Pregnon and potentially Poncho as well. Both those guys red hot in terms of their stock. And then Bryce Betcher right now, unfortunately, stock pretty down. He's had a little bit of a rough year. He feels like a guy who's pretty good everywhere, but not elite anywhere right now. And I think we thought he was on the cusp. Like he was a B plus at everything last year. And you thought, oh, he'll take a step up and be an A- in coverage and A- when he blitzes and A- defending against the run. And instead it feels like he's either regressed or kind of stagnated. And his stock seems to be down. And I just wanted to touch on those things kind of before we get into some of the other teams.
Yeah, by the way, like off-ball linebackers in the NFL, this is a conversation for another time. There's a real issue. More teams. Almost everyone plays base nickel now. More teams are running dime, where you want 6 DBs, and part of that is scheme and coverage. Part of that is people want these hybrid safeties, like what Seattle's doing with Umenyiori, and part of it is we can't find off-ball linebackers. They're just not good.
Insanely scarce. There's like 4 good ones in the whole NFL right now.
In today's world of the NFL, I mean, you look at like what the Rams are doing with all this 13 personnel, and we're running these heavy sets, and we're doing anything to get the whole point of the NFL right now is let's do anything we can to get you in base. If we get you in base, we are going to murder you.
Yep.
And we're just going to put your linebackers in an absolute blender. And it is true when you watch Betcher, and I really like Bryce Betcher, and he's a great story. Bryce Betcher having to cover NFL backs or tight ends. And then the problem is that if you do have to go in base, Bryce Betcher against NFL guards that weigh 320 pounds. Yeah, he's a bit of a tweener. And then that's not saying that he won't get drafted. It's not saying that
I think he will get drafted.
I mean, like we talked about like Noah Sewell. And Noah Sewell's, playing in the NFL, starting, and he's fine. He's out there as a 2-down linebacker. So I mean, there's a place, but yeah, this isn't just a Bryce Betcher thing. I think this is just a linebacker thing in general. Like I'm telling you,
for sure.
The days of the off-ball linebacker right now in the NFL, and this is cyclical. It may come back, but if you had to say right now, what is the worst position in all of football?
Oh, it's not close.
It's not close. It's off-ball linebacker.
Yeah.
It is not close. And I know there's a scarcity in linebackers, there's a scarcity in O-linemen, there's scarcity in corners. There's a reason why linemen and corners don't get traded, because you can't have enough of them. Everyone needs them. Linebackers, they just don't exist. Like let's try to find a guy like Ernest Jones for the Seahawks, and has been banged up, but it's like, can we just find a guy and kind of hide him in our system and hope that it kind of works out and he can fit one little hole for us? You're building defenses now basically around trying to hide linebackers. I mean, I didn't mean to get on a whole
you're
sideways down there, but it's one of those things that if you're a football nerd, that is a really interesting development the last handful of years in football, the death of the off-ball linebacker.
And look at like Nate Landman. You want to look at why part of the reason the Rams and Seahawks defenses are successful. The Seahawks have found Ernest Jones, and they found a workable scheme kind of around his limitations. And then Nate Landman has emerged, a 4-year player out of Colorado for the Rams. And you look at this Rams defense, and Landman's a stud. And that's part of the reason. Yes, Kobe Turner. Yes, they have all those pieces. Jared Verse and Brandon Fisk has kind of fallen back a little bit, but they've got pieces up front where they're really talented, but their linebackers, even when they run that 4-2-5, do a lot. And Landman has been phenomenal. And again, that if you have a good inside linebacker, an off-ball linebacker, you can do a lot. Look at the Niners defense when they have Fred Warner. They can kind of mask things because he's so good. Devin Lloyd, a guy that you picked out in the draft and said, if I had to pick a guy that was going to succeed, he's emerged this year and been really, really special.
And he's been a huge difference for them. And it took him a little bit to kind of get it figured out. But when you have one of those guys, it's like you have a piece that you can deploy. A cheat code, because there's just not enough of them. There's not enough of them. Look at what Zach Bond did for Philadelphia last year.
Yeah, that's a great point.
You know, and again, he's taken a little bit of a step back, but Zach Bond last year, they don't win the Super Bowl without finding a guy that was a backup special teams, backup linebacker, special teams guy. And he came into Philadelphia and he worked in that system, and it changed everything, you know, for them. And there's just not enough of those guys out there. And so I just be careful, like when people are critical of linebackers in college.
No, it's a good point. It's fair.
If there's not good NFL linebackers, and there is not, it's even harder to find in college football. So I just think sometimes we get into this, you know, what's wrong with, you know, Bryce Betcher or whatever. It's a really tough position to play right now, and there's not a lot of good ones. And so there's a place for him. It's just, you know, I think everyone thought that he was, like you said, he was going to take this huge monster step this year, and it's hard. That's maybe the hardest position to take that step.
You have to be big enough to take on a guard. You have to be strong enough to shed that guard. You have to be long enough and fluid enough to cover tight ends going down, like run up the seam. Yeah. You've got to be able to be quick enough to get to a running back in the flat. You've got to be a thumper to tackle running backs, and you've got to be, again, fluid enough to kind of turn your hips in coverage. You have to be a unicorn now. Like Fred, there's a reason it's like Fred Warner, Devin Lloyd, Landman, and like Roquan Smith. You know, like it's a hard thing to find.
Yeah, and after that, then it turns into like a whole, like, you know, it's like throw a dart. Like Nick Bolton was really good for the Chiefs.
Or just really limited, right? Like Ernest Jones is really limited, like a first and second down guy. And he can be really good at that, but you got to take him off the field a lot on third and long. Yeah. Like it's that kind of situation.
Yeah.
Two really ugly losses in the Northwest. Wisconsin beats Washington 13-10, in which I believe Wisconsin's punter was the leading passer.
Yeah.
And then
23 yards or something.
Oregon State loses to Sam Houston State on senior night. And for my money, is the worst loss I can ever remember for Oregon State. Sam Houston was 0-8 in a bad conference. They were terrible.
They were the worst team in the SP Plus Index. Now this week they've jumped ahead of UMass. But I just want people to realize, like, I've been doing this for basically 25 years. And I went as far as to say it's the worst loss in Pac-12 history. And I was in person for the Washington State Apple Cup that led Washington being 0-12. I was there. I remember the Stanford opening their stadium against UC Davis, their brand new stadium, and like 10,000 people showed up and they lost. Yeah. I was there when Oregon State lost to Sac State. I was there for Portland State. I remember when Washington State the bed in a couple of these early season non-conference games against the
Eastern Washingtons and Montanas of the world. Yeah.
Yeah. I've seen some really, really bad losses. Sam Houston State was the worst team, not the worst team in the Pac-12. They were the worst team in college football, like 136 teams. They were 0. They were 0-8. They did not have enough players to travel. They were just suiting up anyone with a body. They didn't know if they had enough players to finish the game. This is how bad, like literally there were players on the sideline that had never put on a game uniform. Like, we all know those guys, like walk-ons on the team. They're like, dude, just come because we need bodies on the side.
They suited up like 6 Rudies.
Yes. It was a team full of them. And they got on a plane, got paid $1.5 million to come to Corvallis, and were 0-8. And fell down 17-0. 17-0. And I believe we're outgained. I want to just double check this.
It was 300-ish yards.
Yeah. Oregon State had 474 yards. Sam Houston State had 157. They threw the ball for 85 yards. They were 3 of 13 on third down. They had 8 first downs. Oregon State had 28. And yet they lost 21-17. That is not the worst loss in Oregon State program. Now, I can't talk about the 60s and 70s and 80s. I wasn't around.
Modern history.
Modern history. I'm going to start when I started paying attention, because I was, I'll go like 1996 when I was getting recruited by these schools, and then when I played, and then into my career here. That is the worst loss in Pac-12 history that I've seen in modern history. It does not get any worse than that. And this is a team that 2 years ago was a potential Pac-10 champion with Jonathan Smith, And now here you are. You lost to an 0-8 team, the worst team in college football, that had 8 first downs. Never seen anything like it. I'd also like to point out, you were up 17-0, gave up the late touchdown before the half, ran the opening kickback for a touchdown against you. Here's special teams again. Block punt for a touchdown. With 4 minutes left, you had a 4th and 3 wide open
from the 10.
On the 10. Hankerson dropped the ball, and you're like, oh my God, it was a walk-in touchdown. Sam Houston wasn't scoring. No. And score all day. Walk-in touchdown, drop it. Sam Houston gets the ball back, and for some reason decides that they're going to throw the ball, right?
With the lead with 4 minutes left.
With 4 minutes left.
No, let's not chew clock. Let's try to move the ball with our offense that hasn't worked all day.
Yeah, never seen anything quite like that. And so they go 3 and out. Oregon State gets the ball back with like 1:39 left. You're like, okay, we can go down and score. No, they throw a pick. Sam Houston gets the ball back, and what do they decide to do? No, they throw a pick back to you.
What?
Like what? It's stupid. And then Oregon State, it goes on downs in the middle.
Those last 2 drives from Sam Houston State are comedy. The fact that they were ahead, hadn't moved the ball all day, and they just need to chew clock because they're not going to score again. Like, don't throw the ball. You can't. You haven't all day. And the fact that they were ahead and then went 3 and out, 2 incompletions, didn't chew any clock, and then they're like, okay, we're going to get the ball back. You know what we should do? Let's throw it again. And it's like, dude, just run the ball and chew the clock.
I've never seen anything like it.
And they threw a pick, and Oregon State still didn't score. Oh,
never seen anything like it in my life. It's the most improbable thing ever. Like, what in God's name?
You have to get rid of everybody. You have to. You have to. No one from this staff can come back. You cannot. No one. I think Barnes shouldn't come back. I don't think Barnes should have anything to do with this. No. The fact that, again, and this has not been talked about enough, the fact that $1.5 million was reportedly and openly, they've talked about it publicly, not available unless it went to someone like Malik Murphy. Who's in charge? Who's running the show? Who has the money that says we're only giving you this if you go get a superstar quarterback? That's not how it works. And if it is how it works, you're doing it wrong. Like, what the frick are we doing? Who says that to somebody? And then who allows it? Who on the coaching staff allows it? Who in the athletic department allows it? Who that's raising the funds allows it? That doesn't say, no, you don't dictate who gets this money. Here's 1.5. We think the best thing is to shore up our offensive and defensive line because you know where our strength is? Running the football. We have a couple of pretty good running backs, and we can mix in some play action. We don't need the big, expensive quarterback that's immobile. And then they paid $1.5 million for Sam Houston State, a program hemorrhaging money in terms of where they used to be compared to where they are now. Absolutely flushed $3 million this year, 1.5 on Malik Murphy, 1.5 to play Sam Houston State. It's inexcusable. And anybody with a brain at this point would say Scott Barnes fumbled this so badly he can't come back. Again, there are just certain markers where I go, this is such an outlier, it's unacceptable. They're special teams. The fact that when they hired Trent Bray, you and I have talked about this publicly. Other people have now talked about this publicly. Trent Bray, when he was hired, everyone, like former teammates of his, former guys who had been coached by him, were like, this isn't going to work. This is bad. Why did they not ask us? He does not have the personality to lead a team. Did Scott Barnes not interview anybody? Because it was loud. He got hired, and within 4 hours of that being public, I probably heard from 10 different people that knew Trent Bray that were like, this is going to be a disaster. Where was Barnes with that? Again, why is $1.5 million only earmarked for a quarterback? Like, complete. And how were they blindsided by the Pac-12 move? How did Scott Barnes give himself a raise after that? Like, there's so many markers that say wipe the slate clean, and they just seem to refuse to wipe the slate clean. Wipe the freaking slate clean. That's all.
It's like
when anything else for Oregon State. Put it together.
Yeah, it's just like when you see the LSU thing, like you knew that no one could come back.
Right.
Once when Nico Harrison in the NBA, right? They just fired Nico Harrison. And that was one situation when they were shooting free throws at the end of the game and it was quiet to try to win a game. The crowd was chanting, "Fire Nico." There's just times where
on Zach Lowe's podcast, he said when that trade happened, there was chatter about moving him off GM.
Yeah.
and making him like an executive somehow.
Yeah.
And Zach Lowe said privately, he told people within Dallas that this is untenable. Like this has gone so far, you cannot just shift him. He has to be fired. Eventually, he has to be fired.
Yeah,
That's
we all reach a
where
point where, just the fan base will not accept it. And I don't know how Oregon State hasn't realized that you're at the point where the people won't accept it. So it's just whether you want to or not, the people will not accept this. So I couldn't agree more. Just you wipe everything and you start new. Sometimes it's your only choice is to just burn it to the ground and then rebuild. So
do you get what I'm saying? I feel like sometimes I don't explain it well because I get just impassioned and frustrated with the whole thing because I actually care. People think I hate Oregon State. That's not true. I really care. To me, it feels like there are so many markers in this season that are complete outliers. Like you're in the 0th percent in the way your special teams executes. Yeah. You're in the 2% in the way you're managing your NIL money with Blueprint and letting someone say we're only giving you 1.5 if it goes to Malik. That money's not for anyone else. Your Trent Bray's halftime interviews where he drops an F-bomb. That's the 1%. When you have that many 1%, something's wrong. Yeah. Because you shouldn't be on the bad end of the spectrum every single time. Nope. Unless something's really broken. Am I explaining that right?
Yes, it makes sense. One thing you could ignore, but I think everyone knows that follows that program. Everyone's on the same page, other than the people that are actually making decisions. So we'll see what happens.
We ran a victory lap. I specifically ran a victory lap on Washington, and like, you fools, Washington's good. You guys are wrong. They're going to be 12-point favorites, 11.5-point favorites every game the rest of the way. Barring catastrophe, they'll win those and be a 2-loss team.
Yeah.
Catastrophe.
Yep. That's why I said it's the 2 worst losses of the year, just in very different ways. One for a program that was just trying to find their footing, and one program that was trying to reestablish themselves as a real player. And I mean, you got beat by a team that the leading passer was the punter, and your offense
it's so bad. It doesn't even sound possible.
Yeah. And your offense once again just decided to just no show. I mean, just flat out, just no show. And there's just been too many times, and I get injuries. We said it. Washington is not able to overcome injuries. And so John Coleman goes down. Boston was banged up. Now we're dealing with right tackle issues. So I get all that. Still, there's no excuse for the way this, as talented as this offense is, there's just no excuse for week after week, seemingly for long stretches. And in this game, the entire game, just not showing up yet again. So everything was in front of Washington, everything. And you lost a game 13-10. And it's funny that when you go into this season and it was the idea of, the defense is going to be what holds this team back. In every one of their losses, Ohio State, Michigan, and Wisconsin, their defense has played good enough to win.
Absolutely.
It has not been their defense. It has been Jed Fish and their offense. And so Fish goes in there and he gives this weird, 2.5-minute press conference about how, it's freshman and I'm excited to be here, even though he sounds in no way excited to be there. And he says that his family lives there, even though his family doesn't live there. It was a weird, go back and do yourself a favor. Listen to that Jed Fish press conference where he says that, people got to stop putting his name out there and he wants to be at Washington. It is the most unconvincing 2.5 minutes of audio. When you want to know if a coach is committed or not, the length of his answer. The longer someone rambles, the more they're full of crap. Like if when you listen to a coach, that gets brought up, whether it's Signetti, Lanning, or whatever, they'll just be like, no, dude, that's ridiculous. I'm not going anywhere. Jed Fish spent 2.5 minutes trying to tell people why he loves Washington without actually saying, I'm not going anywhere.
Right.
It's weird because I think Washington's still a good team. They're 6-3. I think they get to 8 wins, which is a nice second season. I still contend, even though it's not bad up there, I still contend that just doesn't feel like a fit. When you have the guy, you have the guy, and when you don't, you don't. And I just don't feel like they have the guy. I feel like it's a weird fit, and I feel like I just feel like it's inevitable. Whether it ends poorly or it ends because he goes somewhere else. It just doesn't feel, if you asked me in 3 years, you put the sports gun to my head and said in 3 years is Jed Fish, it would take me 2 seconds to
3
say no.
years, no way. 3 years, no way.
Okay.
I think he might try to leave this cycle. I
Yeah,
haven't heard anything. I just excuse me. The vibes are horrible.
Yeah.
On both sides. I think if you did a straw poll of Washington fan and you said Damon Williams will stay, but Jed Fish leaves this offseason, and you guys enter this coaching carousel where there are 7 to 8 really good jobs, would you take it? Do it now and you keep Damon Williams, or wait on Fish, staying or whatever? I think they'd take it. I think they'd say, okay, he can leave. We'll keep Damon Williams. We'll do it now because he's going to leave soon anyway. It just feels weird. He hasn't embraced Washington. His family clearly hasn't embraced Washington. Washington hasn't really embraced him. Like, I know a lot of Washington fans, and there almost always used to be some sort of debate if they were successful. Like Peterson's way better than Chip ever was. You get some of that. Yeah. You don't hear anything about Fish, like Fish is way better than Lanning, or Fish is way better than Lincoln Wright. I don't hear any of that stuff. They don't defend that guy at all.
Because he doesn't feel like their own. Like I said, when it feels like you've got one, and when you have someone that's a placeholder, and whether it's fair or not. And Fish is like, this hurts our program when people talk about this. And, yes, I agree with that. It's not good for recruiting. It's not good to have that speculation out over your head. But also, you're the one that you're capable of stopping this. You're capable of going 10 toes down. Every coach that complains about this sort of media coverage, it is a product of your own doing. It is so easy to put all of this to rest. It just is. But coaches don't want to do it because then they look like an ass when they leave, when they pull the Nick Saban. And so no coach is willing to do it unless you really are committed to saying, I'm not going anywhere. Which, again, when you don't do it, that leads me to believe, and I get why. I'm not criticizing you for not being 10 toes down and saying, hey, no matter what, I'm not going anywhere if you don't believe in that. But also don't be mad at us when we clearly point out the fact that you aren't all in on this.
Right.
So you're trying to say, hey, stop talking about me potentially leaving because it hurts my program. But at the same time, always having in the back of your mind that I could be potentially leaving. And that's hypocritical. You don't get to have it both ways.
Right. I got into a big argument with Willie Taggart before he left for Oregon. Probably the biggest argument back and forth I've ever had with a coach. He was wishy-washy in his answers, and it was pretty far down the line. Like, it was very clear that he was a lead candidate for the Florida State job. Yeah. And he tweeted something like, can't wait until our young kids get on campus, like our recruiting class. He was like hinting at the recruiting class. Yeah. And at Oregon, like he was, and I quote tweeted it and was like, don't do this. Like, if you're being wishy-washy in your answers, you do not have to tweet. Like, I can't believe that we're saying that about a head coach. You don't have to tweet about next year's recruiting class. Yeah. If you kind of know you're gone, just kind of give the wishy-washy answer and let things shake out. Yeah. Don't also kind of double down on Twitter of like, so excited to be, have this really good recruiting class coming in, because publicly you're already kind of saying, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. Yeah. So he got really upset and contacted me and was like, what are you trying to tell me to do? What are you telling me? And I'm like, well, dude, I'm saying you don't have to tweet. Like I can't believe I'm the one telling you this, but you don't have to tweet. Just wait and let it play out. But when you tell young kids, you're telling 17 and 18-year-old kids, like, basically, I'm going to be your coach. And he's like, I didn't say that. And it's like, you are, though, because you're saying you're excited for your recruiting class to step on campus in Eugene. So all those kids are reading that as you're coming back. And I know that because some of the kids text me about it. Sure. So I know that that's the message you're sending. And he's like, that's not what I'm saying. I have to, there are politics to all this, and I kind of have to say. And it's like, but you don't have to tweet. No. You don't have to tweet. And he got really mad. And we talked for quite a while. He ended up being really heated. And then he left, and he understood, I think, what I said. And I messaged him a long message because we didn't talk on the phone after that. And was like, this is what I meant. Now that tweet makes you look like a jerk. And I don't even think you were trying to be a jerk. I think you were trying to stay the course
Yeah.
while you were deciding, except you don't have to use social media to do that.
Yeah. Well,
And then we ended up talking after that and we're okay. But yeah, it was a heated moment at the time.
Yeah, I think it's kind of smarmy. I don't ever fault the guy for leaving or looking for a better situation. Just like I wouldn't fault someone for deciding that they don't want to be married to someone. Hey man, you met someone else and you've been married for a couple years and it's kind of a rocky marriage a little bit. You meet someone down at a bar or you meet someone at work and you're like, I think I really want to give it a crack with this person.
You find your Pam Beasley.
Yeah, right. And so you're like, I want to give great reference. It's like, hey, I want to take a crack at this. I will never fault someone that. What I will fault someone for and make me think that you're a piece of shit is that while that's who you want to be with and you're kind of trying to build up the courage to do it, you go home and tell your wife that you're building a new house together and that you want her to move across country with you to take this new job. And you're like, oh my God, honey, our future is so bright. Meanwhile, you got one foot out the door and you know that there's a good chance in 6 months that you're going to leave, but you don't want to say that because the girl that you're trying to get with may not want to be with you. And so
is this a fling or are we going to turn this into something? Right.
And that's where I think that that's the problem that I have with it. That's where I think that you come across as smarmy. But if you are someone honest as you can be, this is why I do appreciate when a coach just says, hey, I'm worried about right now. All I'm doing right now is focused on this. I'll deal with the other stuff later, or that's why I have an agent. And yes, that may fan the flames and maybe be speculative, lead to people talking about it.
But everybody gets to read it the way they want to, though.
Exactly.
You're not lying to anybody.
And at least you're not being a piece of crap, right? At least you're trying to do somewhat of the right thing. And so these wishy-washy answers and then mad at people for talking about it, get out of here. Coaches are so hypocritical. Coaches demand respect and accountability out of everyone but themselves.
I got a call.
And that stuff drives me bananas.
I got a call from a coach in the Pac-12 at the time when the Pac-12 was together and said, just so you know, I just left the living room. And he said Mario's staff was in here. He said the name of the coach. I'm just going to say Mario's staff was in here. And they're recruiting, and this was before the Civil War game that year. They were recruiting him to Miami. I was like, what? And he's like, dude, I'm telling you this. I'm telling you this. It didn't come from me. Mario's staff was in here. And by the way, that coach was like, don't write it in sources and the coach and everything. I'm just telling you. Yeah. That coach was one of the very first coaches that went with Mario to Miami. There's no doubt it was true. There's no doubt in my mind. And by the way, that kid ended up at Miami. And people were like, he's staying. And I'm like, I'm telling you, sometimes the recruits know, and it's funny because they'll try to be like, hey, like keep this under the tuck. People don't realize that some of these kids I've known since they were 8th graders coming to camps. I've known them for a long time. Yeah. So this idea that not everybody, I mean, there's recruits that are across country that I never got to know Brandon Finney, right? He was an elite recruit that Oregon recruited from cross country. He doesn't know me from anybody. But if you're a local kid or you're a West Coast kid, there's a good chance I started covering your camps and writing about you when you were 15 years old. Yeah. So the idea that a coach would be like, hey, come with me to Miami, and that wouldn't ever get to anyone else is really weird. Like sometimes that stuff breaks from the recruiting side more than anything. Yeah. What's left with this Washington season? Is there, I don't want to say, is there anything salvageable? 8-4 is solid. It's solid growth, but it just feels like this loss is going to be the thing that they talk about for 6 months. Like, say they beat Purdue and UCLA, they lose to Oregon by 17 or 10.
It still comes down to Oregon. And I guess if you want to try to spin this on the bright side of things, if you're Washington, it comes down to Oregon, right? If you beat Oregon, we thought that you had a chance at a special season.
Yeah.
You don't have a chance at a special season, but if you beat Oregon, it changes the tenor of everything.
Which we both agree that's super unlikely.
It's just the way this team's playing in the injuries.
Beginning of the year.
I don't buy it. But I think now, like, you got to find a way to finish strong, and I think you got to find a way to silence some of the Jed Fish crap, which is why I go back to that press conference. I was really disappointed in the press conference. I thought coming off of that loss, I was like, Fish has a chance to really like this is now when more than ever you have to be rock solid.
Circle the wagons.
Circle the wagons and just be like, no, I get it. I've been a vagabond going nowhere, and he didn't. And now you go into these next 2 games against Purdue and UCLA. You have to win those games because I do think that Oregon's probably going to thump you. And then you just, I guess you look ahead to next year, and I'm nervous. And I try not to live too much in the moment and I kind of overreact, but that Wisconsin game really kind of shook this season. And I think the way Washington finishes is so important.
It's going to be really telling.
It's going to be really telling of where this team goes. Do you rally together? Do you look good? Do you find ways to win these next 2 games that are absolute must wins? My God, if you lose either one of these games and then Oregon whips your ass, it's a disaster going into the next year and recruiting in the portal. And we're not certain about the coach, no matter what he says. I know the fans are pretty frustrated. I've heard from plenty of Washington fans. So it's just a huge, these last 3 games are absolutely enormous. In fact, it's funny. That Wisconsin loss, like I thought we kind of thought these next 3 weeks were potentially obviously huge because it could be setting up this big matchup. I actually think there might be more on the line now with these 3 games because of the Wisconsin loss than had they won and a playoff spot was on the line. I really believe that it could be even more kind of program defining. They just have to find a way to stabilize things, and you got to show some consistency. You got to show that your offense just doesn't disappear in like these long stretches against teams that has no business disappearing against. So where do they go from here? It's going to be a really interesting 3 weeks for Washington. And I think for Washington fans, I think they're pretty nervous about it, talking to them.
I have silenced my phone, and for some reason it still connects to my laptop when it's open.
Oh, yeah.
So even though it's silenced, it goes off. So I apologize for that. Yeah, I agree with you. I think if they win those 3, you give them back the Wisconsin game, they win that one, they beat Purdue, they beat UCLA. That Oregon game means a lot. But if Oregon wins that game by 24 points, we go good season. This is kind of who we thought they were. Good football team, progress made. But it still kind of feels like they're maybe in limbo with Fish. Still kind of feels like you don't totally know the trajectory of the program. Yes, things are going up slightly, but it doesn't seem like anyone's super happy. Again, I wouldn't say disgruntled either. It's like this,
it's a weird limbo.
Ambiguous limbo thing.
Yeah,
this Wisconsin game puts them in the pressure cooker.
Yeah,
where it's like, who are you? Who are you, Fish? Are you Rolling Stone? Are you a guy that's going to stay? Washington, where are you guys at with Fish? What's this situation? I think you hit the nail on the head. I think we're going to learn a lot from them in the next 3 games. Is there anything, we'll pretty much wrap here, is there anything you can learn from Oregon State in these next couple? We talked about Washington looking forward. We talked about Oregon looking forward. We didn't really – we kind of took a crap on Oregon State because, let's face it, they keep taking a crap on our television every Saturday night. Is there anything you can learn? I mean, if they collapse – does it matter? I kind of don't think it does. I think
it doesn't.
It's all done.
I don't know what happens to this roster. I don't know. We've heard whispers of kids, the kids that careful with my words. Not everyone will be back.
There are kids who play who already feel strongly that they have their next destination picked out.
Yes, this is it's not good. It's just it's a really bad spot. It's a really bad spot to be in. And we won't learn anything until we find out to the other side. You're in it right now. You're in the hurricane. And until you come out the other side of things and you get the lay of the land and we see what happens, does Scott Barnes come back? Who gets hired? What's that guy's staff? What can he do to try to salvage some sort of recruiting class? I will say that the team has enough talent. If you're able to keep it together, this should not be a 2-win team.
No,
I mean, there's with a better coach team with less chaos around them. This is a 5 or a 6-win team right now.
Yes.
Should have beat Fresno State. Should have beat Houston. Should have beat Sam Houston State. Did beat Washington State. Did beat Lafayette. I mean, that's 5 just off the top of my head, 5 or 6. So that's what I would say is you get the right guy in. That's a stabilizing force. Hit the transfer portal a little bit. And the schedule that you're going to play, this could be a bounce back year. You're not going to bounce back. You're not going to win the new Pac-12. but you should be able to bounce back and win games and be
Six games.
And yes, and be a bull team. But we won't know any of that until this moves on. So what do you learn going forward? Nothing. There is nothing to learn about this season. It's just it's lost. It's a lost season out in the sea, and we'll see in a couple months when they hire a coach.
I do wonder, because Ed Ogeron was the first name, then Paul Chryst. Those are guys that are free agents, so it's really easy for them in the middle of the year to say, "Hey, we'd be interested in the job." So it becomes easy for a reporter to be like, "They're the lead candidate," because they're the loud candidate. Respectfully, Coach Marion is a guy who's climbing, and he's very active on social, and he's very active. I think that his camp, as they were, is going to let it be known that he's trying to rise up. So we've heard that name. So kind of the characters you'd hear, the cast of folks you'd expect to hear loudly from. Notice no one who's at a equal level program or a Power 4 program, an OC or anything in the middle of a year. No. We haven't heard any of those names, and part of that is those guys don't talk right now. Yeah. So I do wonder how far they really are along, or if they've interviewed candidates that are mystery candidates. Any of those names mean anything to you? Chryst, Ogeron, I don't think is a real thing.
No, I don't. Like I said, there's two ways you can go with this, and I don't know which one they prefer. I prefer one over the other, but I'll listen to the other. Let's take Brendan Marion and let's take Paul Chryst, right? Two names that are thrown out there. I'm with you, Ed Ogeron, whatever. I totally get Paul Chryst.
I do too.
I get it. Nice job at Wisconsin. Won a lot of games. There's some, talk about how it kind of disintegrated there, and the program lost its footing under him at Wisconsin. He's not going to. No one will be a perfect candidate. No one who's a perfect candidate is going to take this job. So if it's Paul Chryst, he's been there. He wants the job. He's a proven winner. Totally get it. In his 60s, not going to take another job. He'll be there hopefully for the next 6 to 8 years till he retires. Totally get the stabilizing force, put an adult in the room, and away you
won 72% of his games at Wisconsin.
Totally get it. Totally understand that.
Yep.
I am more on the line of go find a program builder, go find someone that's young, energetic, that'll be 3 or 4 years and leave after he has a 10-win season. That's the way I go. Find a guy that's a tireless recruiter. I love the fact that he's African-American, a guy like Brendan Marion. I do think that young African-American coaches, it's a huge deal. I think being able to relate to the majority of the players that you're recruiting. I do think that that's a nice advantage for you. He's a guy that kind of understands the culture of young kids, the kids you're recruiting. He runs a very exciting offense, and he won't be there for very long.
Right.
And so that's the downside of him. So both of those have downside. I tend to lean towards the young, energetic guy. That I want butts and seats. If you're going to lose games. And by the way, he's not killing it down at Sac State, but he scores 45 points a game. And so that's kind of where I lean. And I just think that those are the two archetypes. And whichever one you go with, I'll understand. I mean, I get it. So it's a matter of which way you see them go. Now, if they go down like an Ed Ogeron, sort of road, that terrifies me, because he's a bad coach. And I'll say this, the thing about the Paul Chryst of the world, or Ed Ogeron or Matt Wells or someone like that, I don't want a guy that no one else wants, right? Like there's something to, if you can't get another job and this is the job that you just land because no one else will give you one, I don't like that. That doesn't, I'd rather the guy that I would rather have the pretty girl that everyone wants and that I might not be able to keep, rather than the girl who's been married multiple times that no one really wants anymore.
Sure.
And that's just me. But I totally get it. If Paul Chryst may be the perfect hire for Oregon State, and I am not going to bash them if that's the guy they hire. Because ultimately we'll see what happens when 5 years from now, as long as you can give me a reasonable explanation of why you hired him, I'm okay with that. And you can give me a reasonable explanation for Paul Chryst. You can't give me a reasonable explanation for Ed Ogeron or someone like that.
Right. And I think with Chryst, you say, okay, things were more of a disaster than we expected. So we want a stabilizing force. And probably our next hire is not a guy who's going to be here for 10 years. If we went young and exciting, he probably wouldn't be here 10 years. So let's at least stabilize things and then go get him. Yeah. I can listen to that. I can respect that. Marion, if you said, hey, What does Marion have that Paul Chris doesn't? We think we can bring in. We think we're a tough place to recruit to right now because we're not in the Power Four. We're in a little bit of limbo. Yes, there's the new Pac-12, but we're still, after this season, it's a little tough. So we want a guy who we think can really recruit. And we want a guy who runs an exciting offense because we're worried about attendance. So we want to put up points because at least people will come to our games. And we want a guy we think that can recruit because right now, Corvallis and 2-10, 3-9 is not a real draw.
Yeah.
I am willing to hear both of those arguments.
Yeah.
You do lose me at we're bringing back Jonathan Smith. Yeah. You do lose me at, okay, we're going to hire this guy, but we kind of want Trent Bray to come back. You lose me at that stuff. And I don't think that's the majority of fans. I think that's a loud minority, but they do exist. And you can't retread. That's why is Oregon State the position they're in now? Greed from the big boys and complacency within their own building. Where it's like, let's just run it back. I mean, let's run it back. Let's find the next closest thing to Mike Riley. Well, let's keep our defensive coordinator. He'll keep the team together. Oh, a whole bunch of guys left. Oh, crap. Guess he wasn't that personality. Stop doing that. Make a splash. Try something. I'll give Washington State a lot of credit. Things have gone not their way. They've tried things. Yeah. They've consistently tried things. And yes, they've lost some games, and this hasn't been the best year, but nobody thinks they're rudderless. Yeah. Oregon State looks rudderless. Yeah. And I don't think Washington State feels that way. And I think that comes from leadership, not just the results on the field.
I agree. Well said.
I think we'll leave it there, man. We'll be back. Do we do another one this week? What's our plan? We haven't talked about it.
I don't know. Well, you've been trying not to die, so we'll see how you feel. If you feel good and you're not dying, we can do another one. If not, we'll see you guys either sometime on the weekend or maybe on Monday.
And I do want to press upon people that when the season comes to an end, we're still going to do these. And we will shift to a lot of draft talk, a lot of looking forward talk. It will probably get a little bit more in depth, even a little bit more X's and O's. There's probably
kind of the off-ball linebacker stuff, and we'll get kind of
talk about interior linemen for the draft and all that kind of, and quarterback,
left guard footwork. Let's go.
It's going to be exciting. So, not to turn you off. Speaking of that, like and subscribe wherever you get your podcast, and thank you very much for sticking with us. And I'm very happy to be back on the Mend.